Between client meetings, managing your business, and everyday tasks, who has time to worry about website hosting? With Kinsta's managed WordPress hosting, you don't have to. They handle the technical stuff, delivering lightning-fast load times, enterprise-grade security, and 24/7 365 human-only support. Simply switching to Kinsta could make your site up to 200% faster. Kinsta's custom dashboard makes managing sites easy, with powerful features designed to save you time and effort. Plus, their free expert-led migrations ensure a smooth transition. Ready to see why Kinsta is trusted by thousands of businesses? Get your first month free at kinsta.com. That's KINSTA.com. Kinsta. Simply better hosting.
One of the hardest parts of getting older is feeling like something's off in your body, but not knowing exactly what. It's not just aging. It's often your hormones, too. When they fall out of balance, everything feels off. But here's the good news. This doesn't have to be the story of your next chapter. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is an herbal formula made with science-backed ingredients designed to fine-tune your hormones by balancing estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol. It helps with common issues such as hot flashes, poor sleep, low energy, bloating, and more. With over 40,000 reviews and a bottle sold every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. A survey found 86% of women lost weight, 77% saw an improved mood, and 100% felt like themselves again. Start your next chapter feeling balanced and in control. For a limited time, get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com with code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Coming up on episode 368 of Wheel Bearings, we've got Tanya sitting in for Nicole. We got the Ineos Grenadier, the Defender 130, Mercedes-AMG SL63, software-defined vehicle levels, in-cabin radar. IIHS takes a look at distraction and ADAS. We got the Polestar 3, and Waymo and Hyundai might be teaming up. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 368 of Wheel Bearings. I am Sam Abu-Al-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
I am Roberto Baldwin from SAE International.
And I am Tanya Gazdik from Media Post and Freelance.
And Nicole is, I believe, probably on a train right now somewhere in Europe with her husband Russ.
Come on and ride it. Woo, woo.
So, Tanya, what have you been driving?
Well, I was driving the Polestar 3 with you, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes, right? That was our trip.
Yep.
I had last week a 2024 Mercedes-AMG SL63 Roadster.
Oh, man, that sucks.
I know. It was a horrible week.
How did you get through the week?
Worst week ever. It was fun. It was a little frightening. I think it's one of the more expensive vehicles I've ever had for a full week. Usually they cut those loans for like 3-4 days, but I got a whole week with it. And do you want to know what it cost, or should I? Do you want to guess?
Oh no, you should just come right out.
Yeah,
just blurt it out.
With the total retail price is $203,885.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Yeah, that's not so bad. Just a
house. It is really terrifying having those very expensive vehicles at your house. I had the McLaren GT at my house for a week, and it was just like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Just like driving around, and I had the Ferrari super fast ones, and I'm just like, I don't like having these cars around.
I just don't want anybody to breathe on it. You know, it's like I take it places and I park as far away from everybody else, and then they all still come over to look at it. And it's like, this is not Cars and Coffee. You know, this is the CVS parking lot. I want you to keep your distance.
Put the cones and yellow tape up.
No, it was fun. It's a convertible. I don't drive that many convertibles, and it had been a while since I'd been in a convertible. So I did take it out on Lake Shore and Grosse Pointe and drove along the lake, which was beautiful. This is like perfect convertible weather in Michigan right now.
Yeah, it's been great around here for driving top down lately.
I don't understand the people who don't like convertibles.
Neither do I. It's funny.
I don't understand. I don't know. I guess they're like, I don't want my hair mussed. I don't know what the deal is.
I don't care about my hair.
One of the stories we've got coming later is about something that somebody at Elektrobit wrote. And after we had lunch last week to talk about it, and afterwards I gave him a ride back to his office, and I had happened to have driven my Miata that day because had a few hours gap in between a car being picked up and another one being dropped off, and so I drove the Miata, and he told me he had never been in a convertible before, ever.
What?
Yeah.
What kind of life is that? One of my little things. I think everyone should own at least one point in their life, even if it's a horrible trash car. They should own a convertible. Just once, at some point in your life, you should own a convertible.
Even if it's an old Camry Solara.
Even if it's an old
Chrysler 200
or a Chrysler 200 or a Nissan was it the Murano?
Oh, the Murano, the Murano Cross Cabrio.
Yeah. Even if it's that weird monster driver, it's the best.
I aspire to own a Pontiac Solstice. That's kind of my secret little. One of these days, I'm going to treat myself cars.
Well, I would strongly recommend that if you do get a Solstice, do like I do with the Miata, and keep it parked in your garage, and just leave the top down and just never put it up, because if you try to put the top up, you will be so frustrated that you will say, "Why did I ever buy this thing?" But if you just leave the top down and just drive it top down all the time, you'll love it.
Yeah, and it's Michigan, so we can drive it certain times of the year. Although winters have gotten so warm here, probably drive it year round.
Yeah, I mean, I drive mine, at least 9, sometimes almost 10 months out of the year, depending on the weather.
Look at this.
So
now you got me online looking at Pontiac Solstice.
Yeah, what are we doing? This episode of Pontiac Solstice Daily.
So tell us more about the SL63.
Well, it has tremendous power. Besides it being beautiful and head turning, 577 horsepower, 590 pound-feet of torque, AMG speed shift, 9-speed transmission. It's just got everything. It really, really goes. It goes too fast, actually, to be perfectly honest. I didn't get any tickets, but it was hard. I had to really watch myself. It's I have a lead foot, Sam. You've driven with me, so
that's not that bad.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really. I mean, it has everything. It's a convertible, but it's so comfortable. You forget that it's a convertible. It's like the seats are comfortable. You do feel the road. Which if you've never been in a convertible, so I did take my neighbor out because she had never been in a convertible. So I thought, let's go for a ride. And oh my God, she was taking pictures so we go to get on the freeway and I'm like, all right, hold on. And then I hit the accelerator, to merge. And she's just like, oh my God. Well, she said some other things too, but not, they're not PG rated. And I said, yeah, you got to test it when you're merging. That's when you test it, and she just was blown away. She said, I don't know if I could own this. It would be dangerous. I kind of feel the same way. It's definitely a car for somebody with self-control. You must have self-control or be ready to pay tickets. It's red. The one I had was red. I mean, you're just
asking for it.
Yeah.
Cops are, oh, look at that. That's a cool. Yeah. Oh, wait, how fast are they going? All right.
Yeah, it was a Patagonia red metallic, $1,750 for the paint job. So yeah, nice red.
Well, I mean, what you could do is you don't have to get the SL63. You could go with the SL43. Which I think I believe that one's a 4-cylinder engine, right? So, it's not quite, it looks, same looks, but not quite as overpowered.
Yeah. Yeah. This one, you actually have to pay the gas guzzler tax, $1,300. Yeah. I don't see that often.
No, I mean, there's a few models that get hit with that, but, not too many anymore. Most automakers, it's mostly at the really high end of the market. But if you can afford $200,000 for a car, What's another $1,300 for a gas guzzler? Too?
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it gets horrific gas mileage. 14 city. They say 21 highway. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I guess it's true, but
if you just set the cruise control at 70 and not touch anything, then you probably could do that.
So 16 combined city highway, and that's just god awful. But then if you're spending $204,000 on a car, you probably don't care. You probably don't care what gas costs, and you just you just love it.
Just living your rich person dream.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I do like about the SL, Mercedes is usually pretty conservative with its colors, but the SL actually does come in some really, really nice colors.
Yeah.
Like I pulled up I'm looking at SL43, and they have a sun yellow and the manufacturer Patagonia red. So I guess that's the one you had, right?
Yep.
Patagonia red. But there's also this hyper blue metallic, which has it's a almost slightly turquoise color. The manufacturer, the Starling blue metallic, and then the manufacturer Starling blue Magno, which is a matte finish, and that one looks really awesome. So it's good to see Mercedes, getting a little more
Playful.
interesting with their colors. Yeah,
playful. A little more playful,
a little more whimsy. So if you had the money, if you had $200,000 to drop on a car, would the SL be on your list?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Definitely. Yeah, I would put it up there with any of the higher end cars I've driven, and it got a lot of attention. I mean, I had people telling me I should buy it, and I just kind of laughed at them.
You know what I do for a living, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. My neighbors, I'm convinced they don't quite get it, and they're always coming over like, "Why are you getting these cars again?" I think they all think I'm a drug dealer, which is
When we moved into the neighborhood, we accosted all of our neighbors to tell them why I was getting cars. We actually went, as soon as we saw a neighbor, as we were moving in, we'd run over to them and introduce ourselves and then tell them what was going on.
You're not a drug dealer.
I'm not a drug dealer.
Cars.
Because before we bought our house, they had to put a new roof on, and I had this is when I had the Ferrari Superfast, and I kept driving by very slowly to make sure they're doing a good job. So they keep seeing this bright yellow Ferrari driving by at this house, and then later on, the person in the Ferrari shows up at the house unloading it, and they're like, "What is happening?"
That's a good one. All right. Anything else you want to share on the SL63?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay. Well, what else did you have? I think you had something similar to what I drove.
Oh, the Defender.
Yeah.
I had the 2024 Defender 130 Outbound, which I've driven a lot of Defenders, but this one was cooler than the other ones. It just had a lot of bells and whistles that I'd not seen before, and it was in Carpathian gray, which it was a really attractive car, and again, really expensive and really bad gas mileage, but it was fun to drive around.
It's horrible gas mileage, but man, I was having a great time.
I actually had to put gas in it, and I was like, oh my God. And, of course, it doesn't take the cheap gas. You got to put the expensive gas in. And that's like, oh my God.
And that's the JLR car. They only let you drive it 500 miles. It used to be 300 miles. They put a set amount of time. How many miles you can put on it.
Yeah, I think I must have pushed it because I ended up having to put a little gas in it. I didn't, I don't like to return them on empty, so
yeah, I don't like doing that either.
I try to return them on between a quarter and a half full. So
I charge the cars before they pick them up for them.
Yeah,
because they're sometimes we'll pick up a car and they'll have 18 miles, and I'm like, who does that?
I know.
Yeah, that's rude. That's just rude.
I mean, and I think many of us, that are doing this, because we're testing so many EVs now, have put in chargers at home. Mm-hmm. I know I have. You have. Well, you own an EV, Robbie.
Yeah.
And so it's no big deal to just plug it in, the night before they're picking it up, and just make sure it's charged up. Make sure at least they have enough charge to get back to the office. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very. And then but yeah, Tanya, I'm like, oh my God, I'm down to a quarter of a tank. I better go put at least a half tank in. I don't want to And I know they don't. I know the automaker pays for blah 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 blah. But still, it's just, sometimes they have to
courtesy
charge of Sacramento or something, and they have
Yeah.
to wash them, and they have to do all these things, and the last thing they need to do is stand there and be like, oh, well, now I got to put like a full tank of gas because Robbie doesn't care about anything but himself.
So what was the Defender like to drive? I've driven the 110,
Yeah.
but what was the outbound 130 like?
It's bigger, but it doesn't feel like a full-size pickup truck. It still, to me, feels more like, maybe like an Escalade, maybe a little smaller than an Escalade. It's really quiet. It's really smooth. It's got amazing power. Well, 395 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque. So not quite as much as
It's got appropriate power. How's that?
It's got appropriate. That is the perfect thing to say.
Or in old Rolls Royce terms, it's adequate.
It's adequately powered. But this one had this ladder system and then this box on the side of it.
Oh, yeah, the box.
I'm like, I opened up the box and I looked because it's got a key. So you open up the box and I'm like, all right, what are you supposed to use this for again?
That's where you put your uranium, like all your toxic things that you need to carry around, but you don't want them in the car.
I just didn't quite.
But there's like a little thing inside. It's like, don't put cameras or computers in here. There's like a little warning inside. I had the 110 and I used it to drop off an old TV at an electronics recycling center, and all the guys were like, "Oh my God, what is that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, come over and look." And they had the ladder, and they're like, "What's this for?" I'm like, so you can put stuff on here. What's this box for? I'm like, "Hold on, I'll open it." They're like, "Okay."
It's not that big, it's not a huge box. So I was just like, what do you use this for? And then the ladder, I couldn't quite figure it out. I tried to use the key and I couldn't get it to, I'm sorry, I gave up. I tried to get the thing to fold down or do whatever it's supposed to do. And I'm like, all right, I guess this is supposed to come down so you can put stuff on top, but it's an expensive vehicle. What would you be putting on top of it? I would just be a little anxious.
Water buffalo. You see, you put the water buffalo on top, and then you want to save like the sweetmeats of the water buffalo, but you don't want them in the car. So you put because you got to field dress the animal. So you put them in that side thing. There you go. The side thing is for all the sweetmeats of all the animals that you've dressed after you've killed them on your safari.
I'm just looking at the Defender website and the configurator, and the first picture here of the side saddle bag. The containers on the side shows a couple of people there, and they opened up the compartment and it's full of plates and dishes and cups, tumblers and stuff. So it's the place to put your dinnerware.
Dinnerware.
This is where the British royalty would put their dinnerware.
Exactly.
All right. That makes we're not British royalty, Tanya. That's our problem.
I know this car is used. So Land Rover Defender has what they call the Defender Service Awards, and they give these away to charities, and then they rig them out for them. And it's actually very cool because I've gone and seen the after they've configured these vehicles for the specific charities, and they actually do use the ladders and the compartments and stuff. I just don't know what an average person would. I guess, like you said, my dinnerware, I could put my dinnerware in there. But if you're like doing search and rescue, or if you're like, there was one that like
things you always need to get to like all the time, like really quickly. You don't want to be digging through the back.
Right.
Like your EKG machine or something. I don't know.
Bandages. I don't know.
There you go. That probably makes way more sense than what I just said.
Dinnerware.
Dinnerware and bandages.
The reality is, though, that I'm guessing probably 95% of American Defender buyers are never going to even open that thing up.
Right. It's just for looks.
They're using this thing to drop off the kids at private school, to take them to dance class and soccer practice and lacrosse games, and they're never actually using a Defender for what it's built for. And actually, I was listening to something recently. I was watching a TFL video. They recently just bought another Defender. They bought a Defender 90.
Yeah. I love it.
And one of the things they mentioned was, from conversations they've had with Land Rover, or maybe it was somebody else, but they said that most Land Rover vehicles never go off-road until the third owner. So the first two owners never take them off-road. But then the third owner that's actually going to use it is going to be the one that's going to use it for what it was intended for, what it was designed for. But they don't buy them until they've fully depreciated. So that they've gone through two owners previously.
And they've never been like abused because they've just been driving around like the fancy neighborhoods, dropping the kids off at the
so they're going to buy that used one
lacrosse
and put some all-terrain tires on there and actually start using it as it was intended to do.
My cousin, he is a huge Land Rover or Range Rover fan. And he actually he buys them new and then takes them off road.
Wow.
He's like that cool. One guy. And I was like, well, why don't you get like a Toyota Ram, a 4Runner? He's like, nah, the ride's too rough. This is before this is when this body on frame, Toyotas or you can get the what's he have now? It doesn't matter. He has one, and he actually takes it off road and does that proper stuff. Yeah. So he's that 1%.
Yeah.
The MSRP on the one I drove is $84,500, and then as equipped, it was $93,800.
Oh my gosh! I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. But you can get the 90 starting at 56, and you can get it used probably for like 40.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, TFL guys, I think, paid something in the 30s for theirs. They were their third owners.
See, that's great. Yeah, that's the way to go. But then you're like, well, I guess it's good. I hope it's going to be okay.
It'll be fine. What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? And they have the little side things so you can put all your tools in it when you need to fix the car.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just put your wrap in there, just roll it up, blonk. That's what it's for. Your tools.
Yeah.
Your tools. There you go.
So you don't have to go pulling all the stuff out of the cargo area in the back. Just have the tools handy,
because usually
the frequently used items, like your tools for your Land Rover,
boom,
have them right on the outside there.
Boom, boom, boom. And I say this as someone who loves the Defender 90 so much.
It's badass. I mean, it got a lot of attention. People loved it. I always kind of use the public meter to see how people respond, and a lot of questions.
So, what specifically is the outbound trim level? Was there anything special about that?
Besides the ladder and the box?
Okay. Is that it?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's good for going out. Bound.
Well, it's got the off-road pack. It's got the electronic active differential with torque vectoring by braking. So that's 1250. And then domestic plug socket. Okay. And then the touring pack, it's got all-terrain progress control, terrain response 2, configurable terrain response, advanced tow assist, and tow hitch receiver. Tow hitch receiver. Okay, so that's $1,000. So those are the two off-road packs that it's ready to go off-road. If you want to take your, $94,000 vehicle off-road, it's ready.
And the third owner will be happy to do that.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's already ready to go.
Yeah.
The 130s are so big. I just feel like
they charge $1,000 for a head-up display. I find that interesting that it's a add-on.
That makes sense. It's a luxury car.
A car that expensive, it seems like it should be standard. I don't know.
That's how they get you with the luxury stuff. Yeah. That's how they get you.
They draw you in with that lowball MSRP of $84,000. And then it's like buying a Porsche or a Mercedes or a BMW. It's like before you know it, you've doubled the price of the car.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
I'm pricing out Defenders. What am I doing? I don't have money for Defender. I'm going to go to Craigslist. Hold on.
Anything else on the Defender 130 outbound?
No, I think we covered it.
All right. Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course, the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.
One of the hardest parts of getting older is feeling like something's off in your body, but not knowing exactly what. It's not just aging, it's often your hormones too. When they fall out of balance, everything feels off. But here's the good news. This doesn't have to be the story of your next chapter. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is an herbal formula made with science-backed ingredients designed to fine-tune your hormones by balancing estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol. It helps with common issues such as hot flashes, poor sleep, low energy, bloating, and more. With over 40,000 reviews and a bottle sold every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. A survey found 86% of women lost weight, 77% saw an improved mood, and 100% felt like themselves again. Start your next chapter feeling balanced and in control. For a limited time, get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com with code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. We've updated the Wheel Bearings merch store, and now there's a whole bunch of new choices, new colors, new styles, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, travel mugs, stickers, aprons, tote bags, you name it. You can get your Wheel Bearings merch at shop.wheelbearings.media. Go check it out. That's shop.wheelbearings.media. Well, I drove basically the same thing last week. Yeah. For those who feel like the current Defender that's built by Land Rover is just way too modern, has way too many features, way too much capability, and what they really want is the old previous generation Defender, but they want one that's brand new with a warranty and everything. Ineos has you covered. The Ineos Grenadier. So for those not familiar with the Ineos story, the guy who's the chairman of Ineos Automotive, whose name I've forgotten at the moment, also happens to be the chairman of another company called Ineos, a British chemical company. That Ineos also, by the way, owns 33% of the Mercedes-AMG Formula One team. So, anyway, when Land Rover announced that they were going to stop building the old school Defender, this British billionaire went to Land Rover and offered to buy the tooling and so they could keep building them. He wanted to keep building old style Defenders for customers that wanted those, and Land Rover declined. And so he went and hired some designers and some engineers and went to suppliers, and they basically designed what is a pretty close to a knockoff of the old Defender. It's very close in design, to most people. In fact, I was talking to my next door neighbor, and he was saying, what is that? And I said, that is the Ineos Grenadier. I said, wow, it kind of looks like an old Land Rover. He said, that's on purpose.
There you go.
That's very much on purpose. And so, it's got a lot of, it's a lot of the style of a classic Defender. And a lot of, similar kind of architecture, but because he was building this from scratch, he did things like went to BMW to get an engine for it. So it's got the B58 3-liter turbocharged 6-cylinder engine. Fabulous engine.
The best engine. One
of the best engines ever built. Fantastic engine. I love inline 6-cylinder engines, and this is a very good one. Got an 8-speed automatic transmission from ZF, as as everybody does. Got solid axles front and rear from an Italian supplier who I can't remember the name of right now. Starts with a P, but got a transfer case from Magna, a bunch of other components. It's got Recaro seats. The seats in this thing were fantastic. The one that I had was the Field Master. So they have several different trim levels of the Grenadier. There's the Trial Master for those that want the more hardcore off-roady version of it. The Field Master is more as when they dropped it off. There was an engineer from Ineos who happened to be in town, so that he came along to give me a walk around of this thing and explain some of this stuff. So the Field Master, is more, for getting around the farm. It's not the rock crawler. If you want to go rock crawling in Moab, you get the Trial Master. If you want something to get around the farm or the ranch, the Field Master is the one that you want. So the Trial Master has things like the snorkel intake that goes up the passenger side A-pillar, and got locking front and rear differentials. The Field Master does not. So it's got, because it's a permanent 4-wheel drive system, it's got a locking transfer case, so you can lock the front and rear axles together, but there's no locking diffs at the axles. You can get those as an option. It's like a $2,250 option on the Field Master. The one I had did not have that. This vehicle in many ways feels very old school, and yet is ever so slightly modern. So you've got a center touchscreen, for the infotainment system, but there's also a panel on the roof, and down the center, another one down the center stack, full of buttons and switches and everything, for all kinds of stuff. And when we were sitting in the car, the Ineos engineer was telling me, when you feel the buttons and switches and knobs, they might feel slightly loose, and you'll see like slightly larger gaps. So we did that. That's on purpose. That's not just bad. That's not just build quality. That's actually on purpose. Because what they, this thing has a 31.5 inch weighting depth. And so, if water gets in there, gets in behind the center console, they actually left those gaps for water egress so that the water can drain out of it. And there's drains in the floor that you can open up. Another decision they made in designing this thing was they wanted to keep it as electrically simple as they could, to minimize the types of things that could potentially go wrong when you're driving off-road or going through a river and things like this. So, for example, there's power windows. They have one-touch power down, but no one-touch up, as you'll find in most modern cars, because one-touch up would require them to add torque sensors, or force sensors in there so that if you put your hand on it, so for the anti-pinch. So if you get something stuck in the window senses that and backs down again. It doesn't continue going up and chopping off somebody's hand or head. So details like that, which, that's fine. They had good reasons for doing that. I'm not going to complain about that because there's plenty of other things to complain about. That touchscreen I mentioned, it's about a 10-inch or so touchscreen. It sits at the top of the center stack. Probably one of the worst displays I've ever seen in a car. Like really, really bad. I know in the past I've complained about some of the displays that Nissan has used in a lot of their cars. This was as bad, if not worse, than any of those. When there's any light coming in from the sides or anywhere else, it basically becomes almost unreadable.
It's just there because they like, well, we got to put something in there.
Yeah,
everyone wants a touchscreen. I guess we'll just put one in.
It does have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support. So that works, but you just can't actually see the screen half the time. So terrible screen. So if you're gonna put a screen in there, at least put it, and especially in one like this where there's lots of glass. Lots of light can come into this thing, which was one of the things I liked about it. It's actually from the front and sides, actually surprisingly good visibility, especially for a modern SUV. But that means that there's lots of light coming in. So if you're going to do that, make sure you have a display that you can actually see when the light is shining on it.
And that's where your speed is as well. There is no dash cluster.
Yeah, there's one tiny little display right in front of the driver that is just for warning lamps.
It's just your CEL. It's just your check engine light.
Yes, which, by the way, I will get to that. But the speedometer and all the other information, things like your pitch and roll angles and your tire pressures and all that stuff is on that center display. The forward visibility, as I mentioned, visibility is actually surprisingly good, especially straight ahead, because the design's got these dropped fenders. A lot of modern trucks and SUVs, you've got that hood that you got this big giant front fascia and a hood that goes way out there. You can't see anything
flat, annoying hood.
You can't see anything that's like 8 to 10 feet or more in front of you. That's below that hood. Whereas this, looking from my driving position, I could just see the edge, the leading edge of the fenders along the bottom of the windshield. So basically I'm looking out the windshield and I could see way down, surprisingly close in front of me. So forward and side visibility, also the belt line, nice and low. Forward and side visibility, excellent. Out the back, pretty mediocre because it's got the split tailgate. So it's like 1/4, 3/4, and it's side hinged tailgate. And on the 1/4 side, it has a ladder, which you don't have to figure out how to put down because it's there permanently. So it's easy to get up and down to the roof.
None of that fancy folding that ALR wants you to deal with.
Right. It's just fixed in place.
Here's your damn ladder.
It's going to be very reliable. Because it's permanently mounted there. For this type of vehicle, I think that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
And then of course, the spare tire is mounted on the other side, which intrudes well into the window area there. So rear visibility is pretty bad. And you don't, again, because of the trying to keep things relatively simple from an electrical standpoint, you don't have a digital mirror. So, don't worry about what's behind you because you're not going to be able to see it anyway.
Don't worry about
it. On the plus side, even though this is a vehicle with with both front and rear solid axles, it's all coil sprung. And I was actually really surprised at how good this thing rides. The ride quality is excellent.
Yeah, it's really nice ride quality.
Yeah, so that much very impressed with. The steering is terrible.
Well, hold on. It's terrible if you want to drive at highway speeds.
Yes.
It's terrible the way most people who buy this are going to drive it.
Or even drive around your neighborhood.
It's amazing in why they did it.
Right.
Off-road, absolutely amazing. At 70 miles an hour on a windy highway, completely less amazing and kind of terrifying.
Yeah. So to explain a little bit, when you're going off road and you're crawling over rocks, what you don't want is you don't want the steering wheel kicking back and forth all the time. You want fairly minimal response there. And so they designed the steering geometry with basically almost no caster in it, which is great off road, but everywhere else it's terrible because, for example, you go around a corner and as you're straightening up, the wheel doesn't straighten up. There's no self-centering to the steering wheel. And so you always, after you go around a corner, you always have to crank the steering wheel back. Also, let's see, when you were driving on that highway, as you mentioned, roads are not actually flat. They tend to be crowned a little bit. So they're higher in the middle and they slope off to the sides. That's so that when it rains, the water runs off to the sides of the road. Very good. Except that if you're driving in the left lane in the Ineos Grenadier, the car will constantly be pulling to the left. If you're driving in the right lane, it's constantly pulling to the right. And so you're constantly making steering corrections and the steering is kind of very slow. It's not pleasant to drive at 70 miles an hour.
It's a recirculating ball steering box is what it is, and it's like perfect for off road. It's outstanding. Yeah. When they did the drive program, most of the time we were off road, and it was great. And when you drive off road, you have to remember to keep your thumbs outside of the steering wheel.
Yes,
because the snap back, you're going to break your thumb or at least bruise your thumb.
Yeah.
With this thing, it was outstanding. But then we had to drive back to Palm Springs, and we're on like a freeway with turns and twists, and your typical California freeway, and you're driving it, and there's like you're just constantly adjusting, and constantly you're like So it's great for going to the club, which is like the people who buy the Ferraris and just go to a club. That's what we're going to do with this. And it's great for the crazy person who wants to go off-roading if you live in Alaska. But that middle ground
of 99% of the population, you're not going to have a fun time with this.
Yeah, you're going to be like, "What is happening? What is happening?" And they are very forthcoming about this. I've talked to them about it, and they're like, "This is what it is," and we explain to people. And so they don't just like let you go in and buy it without giving you the information. But you definitely should drive this. This is not something you should drive without a test drive because it is a very weird, especially if you've driven literally any modern car in the last 40 years.
Yeah. So. The one that I had only had a couple options on there. There was the $905 blue paint on here. Where's the price here? It was like $84. Oh, here we go. $84,005 was the grand total. There are currently about 19 Ineos dealers across the United States. So you may have to go a ways to actually get one of these. And if you need any service, you will have to go back just as far to get it serviced. So, if there's 10.5 inches of ground clearance, the approach angle is 36 degrees, departure angle is 36 degrees, 28 degree breakover angle. If you want something for off-roading, if you need something for the farm, is not, a 30-year-old, F-150 or Silverado, then, be my guest, consider one of these.
If you wear one of those jackets, those brown grayish jackets, and like a Crocodile Dundee hat, this is the perfect car for you. Yeah. If that's your regular outfit, this is the car to get.
For everybody else, buy a Ford Bronco, or if you've got the money, get a G-Wagon,
Defender 90 or a G-Wagon.
Yeah.
Well, if you're rich, get the G-Wagon. This is, I think, they were very much when I talked to them about I'm like, it's very much people who want to be seen in it, and they're just going to drive from here and there, which means that the second or third owner, like a Defender, is going to finally take this thing off road, or the person who lives, in Montana or Alaska and has a little extra scratch and wants to be a little bit different from all the Broncos and all the, you know, the Land Rovers. Like, you want to be that different person. You don't want to just get the G-Wagon. You want to be someone who sort of sticks out. Or if you're a Vera cosplayer, like there's this TV show, this British TV show, Vera, where she drives an old Defender. You can get this for that as well. There
you go. A couple days before it went back, check engine light came on.
Oh.
And I plugged in my my little device and read the code, and it was it said small leak in evaporative emission system. I tried to clear the code, it wouldn't clear with an ignition cycle, and after the check engine light came on, the cruise control wouldn't work anymore either. So I let the folks at the fleet company know about that. The Fieldmaster. One other cool thing about the Fieldmaster, you do have these glass panels, the Safari windows above the two front seats, which you can either pop up like vent windows, or you can remove them entirely. And it's got like a bag, really nice bag in the back to put those into, so you can have that sort of semi-convertible look or feeling, with some open air directly above you. Unless you are fall into one of those small niches, and if you do buy a Fieldmaster, spend the extra couple of grand and at least get the optional, front and rear locking differentials.
Yeah,
so that third owner, will really appreciate it.
I really like the Grenadiers just because of they are just laser focused on this one thing, and they have the big buttons and the levers, and they're we made sure they're big.
It feels like driving an airplane.
Yeah, and they're we made sure there's a lot of space, and they're big so people with gloves can use it, because we realize that someone lives out where it's really cold and they want to get up in the morning and they want to be able to drive with their gloves, so they can still use all these things. And they're and there's a display, and then they can. Well, I do think that I felt like they should have just put a dash cluster in, an analog dash cluster, and then the display could just play your music and show you when when you've locked the differentials. But you actually have to use there's a actual gear shift, and you have to actually you feel it, it's clang clang
when you're going from 4 high to 4 low.
Yes, it's so great at all the crazy nerdy off-roady things that I love, that I just have no ability to do. This car makes absolutely 0 sense in my life. 0 sense whatsoever. If I ever move to Alaska, there's nothing around. I'm got to go to the store. Let's get the Fieldmaster. Yeah, it would be great. But here in Northern California, I'm fine with my BRC.
One cool detail that the engineer mentioned was, there's the off-road button on the center stack. And when you press the off-road button, one of the things that happens is it actually turns off the electric cooling fan that behind the radiator, and it turns off a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of electrical components, so that if you do go wading through the water, you don't want that stuff running. Mm-hmm. So it'll turn all that stuff off. So that, just a lot of interesting details that are meaningless to the vast majority of people.
That could be handy in Detroit when the freeways flood,
That is a good point.
There you go. As when I drove when GM, they had me going on the Hummer EV SUV program, they had messed up my schedule, and it ended up overlapping with something else. And by the time I got to them, they're like, well, we've done some of the drive. They just gave me the car for the day. In Northern California, during one of the worst storms ever, all the roads were flooded, rivers were overflowing. I was watching trees just fall down while I was driving. And while I was driving this big, monstrous, you don't really need this vehicle, as, society was collapsing because of weather, I was like, well, this makes sense now.
Yeah.
Perfect.
This makes perfect sense right now.
All right. So that's the Ineos Grenadier Fieldmaster Edition.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to say, ahoy, or land ho, and not feel weird about it. So here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance offers access to the largest towing fleet on the water. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to say, shiver me timbers, and not feel weird about that either. Get more with Geico.
Okay, let's move on and talk about kind of the opposite of the Ineos Grenadier. Tanya, you and I were in, where were we? Oh, yeah, Wyoming.
Jackson Hole.
Yes.
It was so cool.
Yeah, to drive the Polestar 3. What did you think of the Polestar 3?
We drove together on the Volvo Drive, the X90. So this was the sister vehicle, more or less, and we both agreed. And I'll just say it for us both. We liked it better. It was just a more refined vehicle. Just it had tweaks to it that I thought were really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. So these both share the Volvo SPA2 platform. They've got the same motors, the same suspension, the same, at least nominally the same. There's tweaks there, but the same 111 kilowatt hour battery pack. The Polestar was spun off from Volvo as a performance EV brand, separate from Volvo. So Volvo has its thing. The EX90 is a 3-row family hauler. The Polestar 3 is a shorter, sleeker, lighter 2-row. They call it an SUV. In my review, I described it more as almost like a slightly tall shooting brake. Like the classic European wagon.
Still has decent cargo space.
Oh yeah,
with the second row down, it's every bit as big as my crossover, my compact crossover.
Yeah, I mean it's 5 inches lower than the EX90. It's 6 inches shorter. Same wheelbase. The cargo space, you go in the back, you got nice big cargo area anyway, even with the seats up. You lift up the panel there, and then there's another deep bin down below behind the rear motor. And you can adjust that cover in a couple of different ways. So you can put it vertically, so you have a sort of a contained space between that and the back seat, to put your groceries so they're not sliding around. You can put deep stuff, big stuff down in that deep bin. You can put it so it's like a shelf. So there's a lot of different ways you can use it. The back seat was enormous in terms of legroom and headroom and everything. And what do you think of the styling of the PS3?
I liked it. I think it's kind of sporty, but not in your face sporty. Just sleek and eye catching, but in a subtle, more refined way. Very Scandinavian. It's just got it feels like an a Kia on wheels, but in a good way. Yeah.
No, I like the interior a lot. With one very important exception. This is a car that starts at $73,000 in the US. Why are there not just four window switches on the driver's door? I mean, I can see maybe why Volkswagen did this on the ID3 and ID4, to save a few cents.
You're like, all right, fine, but this is this is Polestar. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, Volvo did the same on the EX90. So you got two window switches and then a third switch, which lets you toggle back and forth between controlling the front or rear windows.
You're saving exactly one switch.
Yeah,
one switch. This is the same thing that happens in the tech industry, where one company does something and another company's like, oh, let's do that thing that they're doing, without actually finding out if like the public like it.
The glove box you have to go into the screens to get to, and I will always hate that. I don't care what they say about it as being sleeker, or, just from a practical standpoint, it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I just want to reach over, hit a button, pull a latch, whatever, and the glove box falls open, and it's full of napkins and a pack of gum you stuck in there 3 years ago, and your registration. That's it.
Yeah.
I keep my registration in there. If I were to get pulled over and I had to be going through the screens to try to remember how to get to it, that could be
to be fair.
Awkward.
When it's in park, the glove box button is on the screen.
Oh yeah, it's right there.
So there's a strip of icons. So there's on the screen. It's the same basic layout that they have in the Volvo, where like the top 2/3, 3/4 is but generally your map, but it can be other stuff. And then you've got a couple of widgets below that for your most recently used apps. So you can have your media control, your media player controls there. And then at the bottom, there's a strip that is permanently there. That's your climate controls. And then above that, there's a context aware strip of controls. So when the vehicle is in park, when it's stationary, among those that automatically pops up there is your glove box. So hopefully you're not reaching over to your glove box while you're driving. Hopefully you've pulled over before you do that. So it's right there. So it's just one tap. So you're not searching through menus. Same thing with your settings and things like that. It's right there. And then once you start driving, those get swapped out for some other features that show up on there. So that, I think, compared to when we first drove the Cadillac Lyriq a couple of years ago, there, even, in any conditions, you had to go through the menus to find the glove box opening. Right. That was a pain. This, I think they've given it a little more thought. So I think it works a little better here.
Even better thought would just be to have a physical button. Because what if the car breaks down? Like a lot of times you got to get in the glove box when a tow truck's coming. And now what if the car is like frozen? You're like, I can't open my glove box to give you all my pertinent information because it's in my glove box. Maybe it's on my phone. Hold on. Swipe, swipe, swipe.
You also have to adjust the side view mirrors in the screens, which you don't do it that often, but it wasn't as precise, I don't feel like, as the old school way of doing it.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I both drive a car, so we're constantly, every time one of us gets in the car, we have to adjust the mirrors. And so every time I've had them, hold on, let me get in here. I'm like, oh, no, not too far. No, not that far enough. Yeah, no.
Well, you can save different driver profiles on there. So when you get it, and you can link that driver profile to your phone or to your NFC card. So, whoever gets into the driver's seat, it will automatically adjust and pull up that profile and get your mirror settings and your steering wheel position and your seat position.
All right. I'll let them have that then.
So you don't have to, unlike that cheapo EV that you drive, it does, take care of some of this for you.
My cheap, but one has all the buttons that I like.
Yeah, that one.
I like my buttons.
So
I like them on my gas car. I like them on my EVs.
So there are buttons on the Polestar 3.
Yeah,
which I both appreciated.
It's not.
And you know what the best thing was? Manual vents. If you want to adjust the airflow, just reach out, grab the little tab, and move it wherever you want. Just perfect.
They got to take it away from us to make us appreciate it when they bring it back.
Right. And Can you imagine, 5 years ago, being excited, like, "Hey, this car has manual vents." People are like, "What are you talking about?" Of course, it has manual. What? What do you? Wait, what? Why would you not want manual? What is happening in your life?
So what?
Tech for tech's sake,
What do you think of the driving experience of the Polestar 3?
It was great. I mean, it has great power. It's more than adequately powered. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I noticed, driving it and talking with Christian Sampson, who's the head of product development for Polestar, that evening at dinner, was how smooth the power delivery was and how smooth the regen braking was. So one of the things that he talked about that they specifically tried to do with in tuning this car was to try to it has 500 horsepower. Like there's 489 in the base version and 517 horsepower in the performance pack. So there's plenty of performance there. But what they didn't want to do was have neck snapping acceleration. They wanted just a smooth, seamless delivery of power. And similarly, when you go to regen, if you're using one pedal braking, when it goes to regen, they didn't want it, as you lift your foot off to feel, you didn't want to feel that jerk, as it suddenly starts to decelerate. You want to be able to have really smooth modulation, so you can just go up and down on that accelerator pedal and be able to modulate the speed smoothly. As we drove over the Teton Pass, I was adjusting the speed, all the time as we're going through these curves and going uphill and downhill. And the entire way across the Teton Pass, I think I only tapped the brake pedal twice. When we were pulling into a place to take some photos, and then another time when coming up behind a slow moving vehicle, and it just felt so smooth and seamless. But the acceleration was absolutely there when I was stuck behind a slow moving camper at one point. As soon as I looked out and saw that I had a little bit of clear runway, I went from 45 miles an hour to a significantly higher speed very rapidly, and was able to complete the passing maneuver and get back over into the right lane, very quickly and safely. So, I really enjoyed driving this thing, and surprisingly, for an EV with electric power steering and everything, the steering felt really good. There was good feedback in the steering.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about the driving experience of this thing just felt really solid, really well considered and well thought out. For me personally, if I was going to spend this kind of money on an EV, I would take this over the EX90, but it's as much a matter of it's in terms of the form factor, it's a better fit for me because my kids are grown and out of the house. I don't need a big, tall, boxy 3-row SUV. I like the looks of this thing much better. It's a little smaller, but still has 300 plus miles of range, and driving it, we left. I think the cars were charged to about 94% when we left, and when we got back, we had about 43 or so percent. We drove 170 miles, a little over 170 miles, and we had 43% state of charge left and 90 miles of range. So and this is driving over the mountains and not
and back.
And not driving in necessarily the most efficient manner. So I think that 300 miles that it's rated at, or 300, I think it's 315 for the standard version on the 21-inch wheels, is it's a very realistic number. Charges at 250 kilowatts, up to 250 kilowatts, 11 kilowatt AC charging. So I really enjoyed this vehicle.
It handled like a sports car on the mountain curves. Mm-hmm. It was really surprising. It felt really good.
Yeah, I mean, for something that weighs over 5,600 pounds, it felt surprisingly nimble.
Yeah.
I did an interview with the current CEO of Polestar. And I posted
from 2 weeks ago.
I posted it like the day they announced. I posted it, and then like 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh no. But no, he had some great. He talked about how the design, the language tells you about the car. Mm-hmm. They want the looks. They want to look sporty because they are performance vehicles, and that 0 to 60 sort of thing to them is just like everyone can do that. It's like you want to create this feeling and this performance oriented design. Really sort of evokes that, and when you look at it, you're like, wow, there's like a little vent that goes up from the front into the so.
Oh yeah,
it's
in the hood.
Really thoughtful. Yeah. It's just really a thought, and even Christian was telling us how they don't want to give up safety features, but they don't want people to turn them off, so they make it so that it's not as annoying, with all the beeping and adjusting and nannying. Basically,
you mean like the intelligent speed control on the Ineos Grenadier?
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, what's
so? That? You shouldn't turn those things off. They're there to help you. And if they're so annoying that you feel like you have to turn them off, then the manufacturer's done something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. They're telling you you're just driving a car and like something's beeping. You're like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what sort of danger I'm in.
Yeah.
And then it's the car who cried wolf, because then you're like, whatever.
Constant beeping is not helpful.
Tires are falling off. You don't know because you're so used to all just random beeping for no reason.
All right. Any other thoughts on the Polestar 3?
No, I thought it was everything. You covered it really well.
All right. Well, let's move on. I know you don't have much time left. Do you want to talk about the software defined vehicle levels?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really interesting, and I can stay on a little bit longer if you want to do this, and then maybe Maserati. That would be cool.
You're trapped with us now, Tanya. Sorry.
So about 3 weeks ago, Dr. Mortiz Neukirchner, who is the technology strategist for software-defined vehicles at Elektrobit, published an article on LinkedIn, and I had lunch with him last week, and we talked about this. And this all came out of one evening he was sitting doing some reading, and he started thinking about something. It was it was late in the evening. His kids were in bed, and a thought came to him. And we've talked in the past about the SAE levels definitions for automated vehicles, and he thought, for software-defined vehicles right now in the market, things are all over the map. Different vehicles have different levels of functionality, and so he came up with the idea of doing something similar for SDVs, so that people could look at it and have an idea of what the actual capabilities were for that particular vehicle. And I had lunch with him last week, and we talked about this at some length, and some really interesting ideas there. So modeled after the automation levels, it goes from level 0 all the way up to level 5. Where level 0, is what it calls software enabled, that's kind of what we've had for most of the last 50 years. Where there's software in the vehicles, but it's deeply embedded and is tied to specific functions. There's no updates, no connectivity for this, and so it's things like parking assistance features and ABS and stability control. They're just built in there, and it never changes. And then at level 5, you've got this idea of a full innovation platform, where you've got a software platform that the automaker and suppliers and third parties can build applications on, and everything is fully updatable. And you've got all these different things that can interact with each other in the vehicle. And he published this, and and like I said, this was only 4 weeks ago now that he first published this. Yeah, it was August 15th that he published it. And then over the next several weeks, he got some feedback and made some adjustments. And one of the things that he changed from the original iteration was having domain-specific levels. Because with automation, we just have it kind of at a vehicle level. It's level 1 or level 2 has got things like lane centering and adaptive cruise control or adaptive cruise. Level 4 is fully automated within a specific area. And with the SDV levels, he decided, well, some vehicles have some of these capabilities for one domain, like for the infotainment system or the telematics, but they're at a lower level for things like vehicle, chassis controls. Yeah. And so, just kind of adding that extra layer in here. What do you two think about, having these sorts of descriptors for software-defined vehicles?
I mean, I look at, I especially like between level 2 and 3, and I think this is probably where he did the main update, where, you have these vehicles that are updatable, but, I talk to the automaker and I say, okay, so you have an over-the-air update. What can it do? Is it, am I just updating the display? Am I just updating some, and they're like, yeah, it's just a display. I'm like, so it's not something that allows me to say update the BMS, the battery, the battery software system, or the traction controller. No. You have to you'll have to go, and that's a firmware, and you have to do all these things, and and so for us, and I think for some of the more techie, the more techie journalists out there, this is great. I think the average person probably this is something they don't ever care about. Like, they don't know what, they also don't know what fuel injection is. They don't know what ABS means. They're just like, I get in the car and it does the thing. But I think as we're moving forward and cars are getting more and more controlled by software, which is, led to some issues at some OEMs, Volkswagen, for example. Having something like
GM, Volvo.
GM, Volvo, yeah, like essentially everyone. I think having this sort of level like we have for driver assistance up to autonomous driving is really helpful, because it also, they can tell us, oh, it's a level 4 software platform, which is, something like, Mercedes-Benz is working on. They want to be able to control the whole widget with software, the whole thing. Whereas, some automakers we'd be happy at level 2 or maybe, 3. And so that helps us with our writing, because we can share the information in a way that it doesn't require us to talk to an engineer who might not be at that event for 30 minutes. Because they're like, okay, it's a level 3, it's an SDV level 3. Like, okay, I understand it. And then you go and you can write your review and tell people like what are the features you can get over, like an over the air update, or even going into a service center. So on that end, I think it's actually really, really smart. And a lot of like SAE people are like in the comments being like, yeah.
Well, and I think you maybe underestimate consumers a little bit, because I think the more information consumers have about their vehicles, and the way, if it's communicated in a defined, intelligent, transferable way, so that they can look at one vehicle versus another, it's going to help them to evaluate what they want to buy. If it's it can be packaged in a way that's more palatable and not as engineering.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If they told us 4, we could just write like what they're going to get with that, versus trying to explain the whole, like, oh, this is what this means. If the automaker can just tell us what level it is, then we can write in a way that is, compatible with the average person's knowledge of vehicles.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, from when I talked with Moritz, one of the things that we talked about with the automation levels, one of the problems is it was never intended to be a consumer-facing thing, level 1, 2, 3, 4. It was always something done by engineers for engineers, and so there's gray areas in the way.
The 2+ stuff is just like.
So level 2 is supposed to be, a system that can control 2 different things at the same time. So steering, braking, acceleration. So things like Volvo's Pilot Assist, which does lane centering and speed control, but it's hands-on, is level 2. But so is something like Super Cruise, that is completely hands-free and does automatic lane changes without driver intervention and all this stuff, is also technically level 2, although most of the industry has taken to calling that level 2+, which doesn't actually exist in the definitions. So there's a lot of gray area, a lot of vagueness. And he thought about that in doing this, and actually wrote this in such a way to try to make it as clear as possible for as many people as possible, to try to minimize those gray areas between the levels. And I think he did a good job.
Yeah.
I think it's yeah, and I think looking at the current SAE levels for automation and what that was originally intended for, and how we end up with 2+, which is still like something that you're like 2+, and I'm like, it's level 2, man. Just yeah. because that jump from 2 to 3 is actually really, really big. It's a pretty huge jump from 2 to 3. And
there is a 2.5. I would argue that you can't really compare Super Cruise and Volvo.
But that's the thing. There in the actual standard, there is no 2.5. There's level 2 and there's level 3.
Yeah,
and there's a huge gap in between.
There's just gigantic jump.
So automakers have taken to calling it 2.5 or 2+, because there isn't a definition that really fits that, because there's a very large spectrum of potential capabilities in between 2 and 3. And I think the way that this is structured, it's a lot clearer, and there's less potential for that.
Yeah. So
okay, one more before for you, Tanya, because you wrote this story, is about Maserati and marketing, or the absence of such for Maserati.
Yeah, I it's an interesting story because there was actually a story in another publication where Carlos had said he was blaming Maserati's marketing for their sales. And then I kind of took a look at it and I'm like, what are they doing? What kind of marketing are they doing? They're really not doing much of anything. And then I happened to find out, I did a little searching and, they're hiring a new marketing person. So the person who they've had doing it in the US is actually, I'm assuming has either been moved over to something else or let go, or I haven't been able to get that clarified, but they're definitely hiring a new head of marketing. And the only marketing they've done is Monterey Car Week, which that's not a lot. It's just, it's a lot of money. That's why that's all they've done, is because it's being at the Quail is ungodly expensive. They did unveil the what was it they unveiled?
The MC Extrema?
MC20. The MC20 project is what they unveiled in Monterey this week. Our last month in August. I'm sure that was their entire budget for the year.
Probably.
Yeah. What's interesting is you go to Quail and you talk to Maserati. They always have the little house and they always have the cars and they tell you the stuff they're doing. Like, wow, that's really impressive. You're building your own motors now. You're doing this. You're like, this is how you're doing the thing. You're like, cool. And then the rest of the year, you're like, it's just crickets. And then so if you write the article about Maserati, every August, September, everyone kind of like, oh, hey, Maserati's still around. And then the rest of the year, people who buy car buyers just sort of forget because, like me, they have, we all have the brains of a goldfish because there's so much stuff going on in the world at all times every day that if you're not if you don't get that little ping once or twice a month about an automaker, you kind of forget they even make cars.
Yeah. And it's, everybody's got to have a social presence. It's just not, you may not be able to do TV ads. I don't even know if there's a reason to do TV ads really anymore, but you got to at least have a social media presence. And if you don't have the budget for that, you're kind of in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always want to make sure people know social media is not run by interns. Social media is run by qualified people who are very good at their jobs. It is not just anyone can. No. Well,
no. Let me adjust your statement a little bit. Social media should not be run by interns.
Oh yeah, if you're doing that,
professionals.
Yeah, it should be run by professionals. And when you see really good social media, like the Wendy's social media, Wendy's, but their social media is so good because they have a team of really talented people who do social media. There's a reason why, the intern had the social media. No. And like Sam said, also don't let the interns should not be running your social media.
I think that was old school when the old people couldn't figure out social media. So they brought in the youngsters and said, oh, let them do it. They're into this whole Instagram thing,
They like the posts.
Yeah.
Putting it on the Twitters and the Facebooks.
Yeah.
The Twitches. The TikToks with the dancing. It's just dancing on TikTok, right? And we're like, oh, man, come on.
and singing, lip syncing and stuff. So
dancing and singing.
It's just really sad because Maserati is such a storied brand, and there's so much brand equity there, and they're not living up to their potential. And he's partly right, but it's partly his fault. Somebody made the comment, when you point your finger, you got three fingers pointing back at you, and it's like maybe you want to give your marketing people some more money to work with, and they'll do something interesting.
Yeah, if you run the company and then you blame part of the company for not doing the thing, you're like, come on, man. You run the company. Yeah.
Your fault.
It's like me driving the car and then blaming other people because I'm not using my turn signals.
Stellantis is just not having a good day.
I mean, they're having problems with Ram, with Jeep. They're having issues in Europe, so they've got a lot of things to deal with.
Yeah, hopefully they'll be able to pull it off.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, a year from now, even 6 months from now is going to be very interesting because there's, here in North America, there's a bunch of EVs that they're supposed to launch, and we'll see how those do in the marketplace. Nicole has an order in for a Jeep Wagoneer S. She wants to buy one of those, but we'll see how the Brotherhood of Dodge takes to the new Charger Daytona. See if Fratsonic exhaust system is enough to convince them to go electric.
I just like muscle cars are just perfect for as EVs.
Yeah.
Because they're heavy, they go fast in a straight line. The end. That's their whole job.
Yeah.
Besides the sound, I think it's really the only thing it's missing from a muscle car that is the sound. And they made one up. Good enough.
All right. Let's see. Do you need to go, or can you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I need to head out.
All right.
So
Well,
I say hi to your
thank you.
kitty cat for us.
Bye.
I heard him screaming in the background. I was like,
Yeah.
why are you doing something without me?
Well, thanks for taking the time to join us today, Tanya. And we'll talk. We'll have you on again soon.
Thank you.
Have fun in Iceland.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Bye.
All right.
Yeah,
Bye.
that's where I'm going. Bye.
All right. Let's see. In-cabin radar. There's a bunch of vehicles launching this year that have in-cabin radar, and actually, turns out in-cabin radar is not entirely new. It's been around, but it hasn't really been talked about for a few years now. And going through this, you and I were both here at Toyota's Tech Center last month for a briefing on the 2025 Sienna, which is getting in-cabin radar. But afterwards, I was within a day or two after that, I was talking to, I think it was Jim Montavali. He was doing a story on this and mentioned that Hyundai's actually had this for a couple of years, or Genesis has. Back in 2021 on the GV70, they added the advanced rear seat detection system, which is a radar sensor for the back seat to detect if somebody's been left behind. This is what Toyota is putting in the Sienna. Hyundai is expanding the in-cabin radar to a bunch of other models this year, including the updated Tucson and the Santa Fe also has it, the new Santa Fe. But and then Volvo and Polestar also have it. They have a slightly different implementation from what Hyundai and Toyota are doing. Those both use a single sensor mounted in the roofline or in the headliner. Volvo and Polestar have different sensors. They're much smaller and they're mounted above each of the doors. And then on the EX90, there's also two more. The EX90 has 7 sensors. So there's one above each of the seating areas. And then a 7th one is above the cargo area in case an animal or a kid gets stuck back there, so you don't forget them. But what did you think of the Toyota system? It's the first one we've actually had a real demo of.
I think it's really great because I think I read, I don't know, just not related to this at all. Like a few months earlier, I had read the article about people who had left their children in their car for whatever reason. And of course, everyone yells at them, "Oh, you're a horrible parent," blah, blah, blah. But the person who wrote the article sort of went through the day with that person and then all the things that are sort of happening and how, cognitively as humans, we can only handle so much stuff that's going on in our brain. And while it sounds like, oh my God, I can't believe you lost you forgot your child. I mean, I know people who have for a moment or two, oh my God, my kid's in the car. Oh my God, this is this thing. Or, there's all it takes is one little teeny tiny error because you're just overloaded as a human with all these things, or it goes outside of habit. It's not part of your routine. And to have these systems, I think people get a little oh, I wouldn't forget my things in the back of the car. You probably have, at least for a moment or two. And I think these systems are outstanding. And I really liked, how Toyota sort of presented it. I liked how it worked. I like the idea that it's, under a blanket, it can see through the blanket and see breathing and movement. So it's not this sort of a really annoying thing that just every time you leave, like a case or a backpack in the back of your car. I can't put backpacks in the passenger seat of my BRZ because the car yells at me because it thinks there's a human there and the seatbelt's not, so I just got to shove it on the ground. And so it sort of gets rid of that sort of annoying beeping, while also providing something that will say, hey, by the way, there's something that's alive back here, whether it's a child, whether it's an animal, and whether or not you think it's a good idea to leave something back there. And what's nice is that it scans and then the car starts honking. So it's like, hey, come back. And then it starts sending you text messages and push notifications. And then you'll get a call about your car after a few minutes after that. So I think it really does a good, and again, sometimes you're like, okay, I'm just gonna leave my dog. Let's just say your dog, because you think it'll be fine. It's only 70 degrees. But if you've ever turned off your car and just sat in it with the windows up, it gets really hot really quickly in your vehicle.
I've done that many times, when I've been in transit between meetings and, I've got to take a call or jump on a Microsoft Teams call with somebody at work. And, so I've sat in the car, with the sun beating down on me, and, you don't want to turn on the air conditioning because it makes too much noise, the fans blowing. So, I know how quickly it can heat up inside the car.
It's like one of the things when you're shooting video in cars is that you turn off the AC, you turn off the fans, so you can do your so you can talk to camera while you're driving.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a moving car with some sort of circulation, but the fans are turned off. And after one or two takes, you're like, once you get it, you're just like, oh my God, because you're already sweating.
Mm-hmm.
You're already and you're flipping everything on full blast. And that's only a few minutes. And that's in, Northern California where it was 65 degrees that day.
Yeah. No, I mean, your car is like a greenhouse. It heats up very rapidly and stays hot for a while. When Toyota was developing this, this project emerged out of a hackathon that the Toyota Connected team did back in October of 2019. And the team that came up with this concept for the in-cabin radar won that hackathon. And so they started doing development on it. But then, 2020 happened and everything slowed down to a crawl. In 2022, Toyota did a big event at their headquarters down in Plano, and they showed us, they announced a bunch of new products and showed us a whole bunch of things that they were working on. One of the things that they demoed then was this system, an earlier version of this system that used a different radar sensor. And one of the things they actually showed, at that they did as part of that demo was, in addition to honking the horn, like you mentioned, and sending you a text message and sending you an automated call, it went a couple of levels beyond that because they were also demonstrating their tie-in with Amazon and Amazon voice services and Alexa. So if you didn't respond to any of the prior alerts, it could send an alert, for example, to your TV. If your TV had, Amazon Fire TV box hooked up to it, it could pop up an alert on your TV screen saying, "Hey, there's still somebody alive in your car," or I think the final alert was the calling the emergency services. So after probably 10 minutes, I think it would send an automatic call to 911 if nobody had responded. So they're not doing that for now, but getting the automatic push notifications and automatic text messages sent to your phone, and the horn honking, both of those things are good things. And as they get into electric vehicles, more and more into electric vehicles, electric vehicles can automatically turn on the air conditioning, if that happens. So.
Because they can't really do it with a gas car, because it's in a garage.
Yeah, they don't know where it is.
You're just asphyxiating whatever's in the vehicle.
Yeah, that would kind of defeat the purpose.
Yeah, they kind of defeat it. Yeah, but as these things start to permeate in a wider the wider lineup, and then they also are throwing them on EVs. You can immediately, while you're annoying the person, that please come back to your car because you left your child or your dog or your cat or your I don't know, alligator in the vehicle. I guess the alligator would be fine, to be honest.
Yeah.
But the other animal,
the alligator would probably like it because they're cold-blooded. So
yeah, so the alligator's cool. Don't worry about the alligator, but you could have it, so it turns on the AC in the vehicle to keep, whatever is in there cool. And yeah, it's again, you seriously go out in your car, even on a spring day or fall day, and just roll up all the windows and just sit there when it's a sunny day, and see how quickly it just gets warmer and warmer. And one of my favorite things as a human is when it's really cold outside, but it's sunny, and then you get in the car and the car is warm.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just, I don't know why. I love that feeling.
Yeah.
Like it's so cold and you get in the car and the car's warm because it's just very, very sunny, but it's cold outside. I don't know. That's one
Well,
of my favorite things.
I mean, well, and that tends to be exacerbated in a place like Michigan, where your windows are often covered by road salt, so you get even more of that greenhouse effect.
Yeah. So there you go.
All right,
Pretty cool. Good job, Toyota and Hyundai and Volvo and literally anyone if you're doing this as an automaker, good on you.
Yep. All right, let's move on to distraction and driver assist features. Recently, IIHS, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, did a study along with the MIT Age Lab, and they actually spent quite a bit of time doing this. It took, I think, a year or two. They had there was actually two separate studies that took place. One, they used a 2017 Volvo S90, and they had 29 volunteer drivers. The S90 was equipped with Volvo's Pilot Assist system, which is a hands-on lane centering system, and cruise control. So it's not like Super Cruise where you can go hands-free. They gave each of the drivers the car for a 4-week period, and they looked at how likely drivers were to do other non-driving activities when using this partial automation system in their vehicle. And they found that over the course of 4 weeks, the likelihood of drivers doing something that was distracting, that was a non-driving task, increased pretty dramatically. Like with the Volvo, it went up by more than 30%. Over the course of time. So as people got accustomed to the systems and what they would do when the alerts would come, they got complacent and they start checking their phone or eating or doing other stuff and not watching the road. And it's important to keep in mind that the S90 does not have a driver monitoring system. So there's nothing watching, if you're actually watching the road. They had cameras in the car that were watching the driver, that were observing the drivers, so they could see what drivers were doing as they drove. But the car itself does not have any such systems. The second study used a 2020 Tesla Model 3 with autopilot, and they found similar results. That over time, people got complacent. The number of instances where the cars in both vehicles, that they found that the number of instances where they started getting alerts because they were not paying attention, they were not doing what they were supposed to do, increased increased pretty dramatically in the Tesla. In the first week, they would have from the first week of the study, the number of attention reminders that drivers got per 1,000 miles traveled increased by 26%, and the rate of escalations fell by 64%. So clearly, this is an issue, and all of these systems that are out there, the hands-on systems that don't have driver monitoring, I think are really problematic, and even some of the ones that do have driver monitoring are not as good as they should be. Because IIHS has also instituted a new ratings program as part of their vehicle evaluations. So they've got a ratings program now for ADAS systems, looking at the safety of these systems. And let's see, they've got scoring that looks at different things like, does it monitor both the driver's eye gaze and hand position? Does it use multiple types of rapidly escalating alerts? So visual alerts, audible alerts, haptic seats. Does the fail-safe procedure allow for the vehicle to slow down automatically, notify the manufacturer, and keep automation off limits for the remainder of the drive? Does automated lane changes have to be initiated or confirmed by the driver? Adaptive cruise control doesn't automatically resume after a lengthy stop or if the driver is not looking at the road. Lane centering does not discourage steering by the driver. Automation features cannot be used with the seatbelt unfastened, and automation features cannot be used without automatic emergency braking or lane departure prevention active. So they've done scoring on a whole bunch of vehicles. Of the ones that they've scored so far, the only one that got an overall acceptable rating was the Lexus LS with their teammate with advanced drive, which sells in extremely small numbers.
4 people who got that car. Good job.
Yeah. GM Super Cruise and Nissan ProPilot Assist both got marginal, and everything else got a poor overall rating. And I'll have a link to this in the show notes. But what did you think of this study?
It's important because I think there was this idea that you can just trust people to do the right thing, and the reality is not really. Because you become complacent in your vehicle, you start to sort of like, I'm comfortable, and as our commutes get longer and longer, you're driving the same route, you're doing the same thing, and so because of that, it's even more, you've introduced even more complacency, because they're like, well, I know the route, I know what I'm doing, and if my car's going to steer, then I can I can check my phone. I can, make sure, and then of course we've also at the same time introduced more, the dopamine hits of social media, and, we've gamified absolutely everything in our lives. And so everything needs to be constantly checked. Everything needs to be constantly updated. And so like, it's this perfect storm of, we need something that keeps us from hurting ourselves and each other with these giant metal and glass and plastic machines. That's really what it comes down to, because if you ride motorcycles and you're riding along, you can because you're sitting higher up than everyone else, you look down and people are just doing the craziest stuff in their vehicles that doesn't involve driving. And it's terrifying. There's if you're driving a car and you're like, oh, I'm a good driver and everything's great. Like, yeah, you're a good driver, but you don't know that person over there is on their phone. You don't know this person's doing this. You don't know this person's doing this. And every little thing is an additional bit of it's distraction. It's hard to multitask. And when you're driving, it's very difficult. And when I do my videos, I make sure I'm like, most of the time I'm on the freeway, I have everything turned on, and I turn like initially to say something to the camera, and then I look back, because most of the cars I'm driving, because I have all that stuff on, are going to yell at me if I'm not like saying this thing. But that's on a straight road, on a I have footage that from a McLaren drive where I'm driving track speeds. And because I'm actually having to like do the driving thing, like the car immediately, like I went off the track, like I didn't go into the runoff, but I went off the driving line, and you can hear the wheels screeching, and I just like, okay, but what am I doing? So like, and like, this is literally my job. I drive hundreds of, hours a year, or thousands of hours a year, really, more than your average person. And if like, someone who's always driving and all they're trying to do is talk. All I'm trying to do is talk, and that is difficult. The idea that you're looking down at your phone, and you can always tell when someone's looking down at their phone. Especially if you ride motorcycles, you get this sixth sense of people who are just bad drivers just by the small little micro movements they make. And if you look in that side mirror, they're looking down at their phone. And these systems allowing them to do that. Essentially giving them permission, because it doesn't yell at you and say, hey, you're doing the wrong thing, is it's scary. And I'm a huge fan of in-car monitoring, because it keeps everyone from doing the bad thing. And I think everyone's, sometimes I'll be driving, I'm on Interstate 5, and I'm like, I wonder what's going on Blue Sky, or I wonder what's going on. I'm like, no, I don't really need to know. I don't need to know. Just keep driving. And I don't really, here's the thing is, like, while I'll test these systems, we have it on our Hyundai. I don't use most of the time. I don't use driver, like lane centering. I don't use it really. Yeah. I just drive two hands on the wheel. I'll occasionally use adaptive cruise control when I'm really stuck in traffic. And even then it's only for a little bit. just because I like to drive, even though traffic is horrendous. But I can understand why people are using these systems and just the boredom of being stuck in traffic. But please don't use your phone while you're driving, because all it takes is that one little moment where you're like, oh, the car will stop, and the car doesn't stop, because you can't trust robots.
Yeah, no, you definitely can't trust the vehicle to do this stuff. It's just modern vehicles today are still not reliable enough that we can trust them to do these things without supervision. Yeah, none of them are.
One of my bosses was asking, because I was doing a to camera while I'm driving, and they're like, "Where are you doing this?" And there's a round road that goes around an old mall near my house, and no one drives on the road. Like very few, especially on like 3/4 of it, no one drives on it. Like 1/4, there's like a section where there's actually a little bit of traffic, but it just goes in a circle. There's no stop sign. You're just going around and around. I'm like, I'm just driving on a round road. It's just this giant, like 2 or 3 mile, like loop that most people don't drive on most of it. Yeah. It's perfect. I'm just like, la, la, la.
Yeah. I mean, something that's interesting about this, is back in the early days of the Google self-driving project, before it became known as Waymo, they actually, looked at doing, a level 2+, hands-free highway driving system like Super Cruise. And, their test vehicles were equipped with cameras, and, they were letting employees drive these things home, to test the system. And they came to the conclusion pretty early on in this testing that, you know what, we cannot trust these drivers to watch the road, and there I've seen presentations, where they showed some of the video clips, of, drivers eating or looking at their phone or putting on makeup or, doing all kinds of things other than paying attention to the road. And they pretty quickly abandoned that and said, yeah, we're not going to do that. We're going to focus on level 4, where there's no human intervention, no human supervision required, because we realize that we cannot count on the humans to do the right thing.
Yeah, I remember a lot of automakers way back in the day were like, we're skipping level 3 entirely because it requires humans to re-engage with the vehicle after telling them they don't have to.
Yeah.
And so that sort of that issue was like, well, we don't want to deal with level 3 at all. And Mercedes has it, and it's at it's in a very there's the guardrails on that are really smart, but doesn't mean that someone else is going to continue to use that system with those type of guardrails. And when I say anyone, I mean Elon Musk. And so it's you don't trust the robots. That's my advice to everyone, as someone who's been covering the robots for a very, very long time, not just in cars, just in general. Like, don't trust the robots, because they're only as good. They're a incomplete version of the person who coded them.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's do one more story before we answer a listener question. This one is about Waymo and Hyundai. So, we've talked before about Waymo was working with Zeekr, which is part of the Geely Group, along with Volvo and Polestar and a whole bunch of other brands, to develop a purpose-built robotaxi. So up until now, Waymo has used converted versions of regular vehicles as their robotaxis. And Zeekr has been developing a vehicle called the CM1E for Waymo, which is basically like a small minivan, sliding doors, 5-passenger vehicle, maybe 6-passenger. And Waymo has a bunch of these that are driving around California now, being tested. They've been spotted on the roads in San Francisco and other places. But a report this week from Reuters says that Waymo has been in talks with Hyundai about using the Ioniq 5 as a robotaxi vehicle. Hyundai is also the majority owner of Motional, which has been developing automated driving systems like Waymo, and they have a bunch of these vehicles that they have used as robotaxis. and that's their current generation robotaxi, and Waymo is apparently interested in using this, because the vehicle's already been developed. They've done the modifications to make sure it's got things like redundant power supplies, redundant steering, redundant braking that it needs for a robotaxi, and they're apparently looking at using this vehicle that already exists, and probably in part because that Zeekr vehicle is built in China. It's going to be subject to 100% tariffs because it's a Chinese-made EV. And so, I think it sounds like Waymo is looking for a plan B for their next generation robotaxis.
What's interesting is that the Hyundai, the Ioniq 5, the Motional, those vehicles are built at a factory like that. Those are production vehicles versus everyone else is like, here's a production vehicle. Now let's just cram a bunch of stuff on it. I went to Singapore. This is where they're building these, and they're like, yeah, these are on the line. We build these on. They have a very weird line.
Yeah.
Line is a weird term for this because it doesn't really have a factory line. They have these things called cells where the cars go and they do one thing and then they go to this next cell and another thing happens. Yeah, no, these are built as production vehicles. They come off the production floor already ready to go with all the bits already baked in, which no one else at least at a from a scale automaker is doing. And so it makes sense for Waymo to sort of look at someone who's, they don't have to like, okay, let me get the Pacifica, let's get it in. Now we got to send it to our people. Now let's install everything. Let's rip the things out that we don't need. Let's do this. Let's do, you have to do all these other things. And with the Hyundai, they're like, okay, we got it. Let's just put our stuff in there, send it out.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so it makes, when you really look at it, it makes sense for both for Hyundai, and it really makes sense for Waymo and what they're trying to do. And yeah.
Okay. We got an email from Jeff this week. Says, "Hi guys, listener from the first episode. Shout out to the OG Dan. Anyway, I heard you guys discussing Android Automotive versus CarPlay Android Auto. My wife and I recently leased a Honda Prologue, our first EV. We've had cars with Android Auto for several years, and after having used it for a few weeks, I'm sold on it over Android Auto for a few reasons. No connectivity issues. Her previous car was pretty hit and miss on the wireless Android Auto. This often became an issue when both of our phones were in the car, as both were paired. Number two, with Android Automotive, we both have our own profiles in the car, and with a simple press, it goes to all of our stuff. If for some reason I take off without my phone, I still have Pocket Casts and my streaming media services right where I left them. Not to say there wasn't a bit of a learning curve, as this infotainment system was obviously very different from our previous Hondas, but I'm a big fan of how this system operates. My only complaint is I think the user interface in my Type R is prettier. So, that's a an aesthetic difference, but you've used a bunch of these systems now. What do you think?
I like the Android Automotive system. I like it in the GM vehicles. I like it in the Volvos and the Polestars. I think it's great. There are things that I still use that the Android on my iPhone that don't quite work. It's just not there. I want to be able. I want to listen to my songs that I bought on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
I want to be able to listen to Bikini Kill, like the weird Bikini Kill song that came out on Bandcamp, and I can't do that in Android Automotive. I have to let me use. I have to if it doesn't have CarPlay, that means I have to get my phone, hit do play, set it up as the launch the app, do the thing, Bluetooth streaming, which isn't safer.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Wireless anything is just not that great, to be honest. Like wireless CarPlay, there is a spot on Interstate 80 right before the Bay Bridge where it just cuts out. Every single car that I've been in, every automaker, there's a spot 80% of the time, it just cuts out. It just stops working. And that is and I think, I think Antoine, who's over at CNET, he's had the same issue at another place somewhere in the Bay Area where it's every car, it cuts out. And so, now with our current Ioniq 5, which is a better car in every way to our Kona, except for the fact it doesn't have wireless CarPlay, I have to plug it in. No issues. So it's like the wireless issue is sort of thing. And also when it comes down to it, I still get, my wife texts me, my friends text me, and I can just be driving. It'll say the thing and I can reply. This isn't to say the CarPlay is perfect and great. The idea that texts still take over the entire screen while you're listening to them or saying to them. So you can't really see oh, I'm at an interchange. Someone sent a text. You hit the button so you can hear it. And now I can't see, where I need to go because it's taken over the entire screen. I don't understand why that's still a thing. It doesn't make any sense. Does anyone on the CarPlay team actually get texts while driving a car? Do they drive cars? So there's a lot of things that aren't great about it, but there's still something, and again, the idea that you can get in any car and something that you're used to just works is nice. But no, I really like Android Automotive. If they had it in my Hyundai, I think it'd probably be better, to be honest. I think I like the Hyundai system. It works really well. It's not fancy, which is great about it, but Android Automotive is really good.
Yeah, I agree. And my wife in her car, uses Android Auto. It's a 2017 Honda Civic, and actually we've had kind of the opposite experience of you in that, it doesn't have wireless Android Auto. It's an older car. And over the last couple of years, she was consistent, and I've had the same problem actually happen in a number of vehicles, where even when it's plugged in with a USB cable, it just loses connection to the phone for no apparent reason. And it was getting really annoying, and I went through multiple times and did like a full factory reset of the infotainment system, made sure the software was up to date. And for inexplicable reasons, I changed cables, I tried different phones. It just kept losing the connection to the car, from the phone to the car. And what I ended up doing for her car is I went on Amazon and picked up a wireless Android Auto adapter that plugs into the USB port. And so now it's got wireless Android Auto, and I put a wireless charging pad in there. There's a little slot in the center console. And so I put a charging pad in there, and she can just drop her phone in there, and it connects and works perfectly. She's had no issues with it since I did that like 6 months ago. Yeah, I mean, all the projection systems, when you're relying on an external device, there's all kinds of things that can potentially go wrong. And this is one of the reasons why GM opted to move away from supporting projection systems, because they're not as reliable as having it built into the car. There's always things that happen. But for the built-in Android Automotive, the drive this week in the Polestar reminded me of this, because we were out in Wyoming and Idaho in rural areas where there was often no cellular connectivity at all. And if you're using, a system like Android Automotive, most of the media you're listening to is going to tend to be streamed. So if you have no connectivity and you're relying on streaming media, whether it's podcasts or, like a podcast app or, NPR or, Spotify or, YouTube Music or anything else, then you're going to be SOL. It's just not going to work. So that is an issue, because, one of the things we wanted to try was, they have the Tidal app in the Android Automotive Play Store, and the Bowers and Wilkins audio system in the Polestar 3, 25 speakers, 1600 watts, supports, it's got Dolby Atmos and supports spatial audio. And, we wanted to try listening to some stuff from Tidal, because they have spatial audio on there. And most of the time we couldn't use it. It couldn't stream anything because there was no connectivity. But
Whereas, like on my Apple Music app, I have things just downloaded that are downloaded with lossless spatial audio, and I can listen to that anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And I don't have to pay like after 3 years.
as long as your phone will connect to the car.
Well, no, I can just as long as if I plug it in, like I don't know what I don't have an Android phone, but if I plug in CarPlay, it's 99.9% of the time I have an issue. It's when it's wireless where it's just like meow, meow.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so and then of course after 3 years, I don't have free access to the wireless, the network that with the automaker. So now I'm paying, I'm double dipping to listen to Spotify or to YouTube Music or to whatever, because now I'm paying for it on my phone, and now I have to pay for it in my car.
Yeah. Well, what you can do in all these cars is, the cars all have Wi-Fi connectivity. So, if you don't want to pay the automaker for their connectivity package, you can just turn on hotspotting on your phone and use your phone as the connection.
But you should be careful with that, because some accounts, like hotspots, it's only good for like, let's say 1 gigabyte, and then after that they charge you. So check your what your setup is like, because I have unlimited data, but I have like unlimited like 5 gigabytes of data with hotspotting.
Yeah,
which is fine, which is great. But if you have unlimited 1 gigabyte and you're listening to it all month, and let's say you hit to like 1.2, 1.3, now you're paying for something. It's a minefield out there, people.
Yep.
Someone's trying to get your money and your data.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Robbie. And we'll talk to everybody next time. Bye.
Bye.
And next week, we will have Stephanie Brindley joining us.
It's going to be a party.
Yep.
Whoop, whoop.
All right.
Everyone's talking about AI these days, right? This season on Compiler, we're diving deep into how AI is reshaping the world we live in. Join us for a new season of Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to say, ahoy, or land ho, and not feel weird about it. So here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance offers access to the largest towing fleet on the water. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to say, shiver me timbers, and not feel weird about that either. Get more with Geico.